similarities with the broader American public, and you had a lot of German Americans, so it wasn't quite as distinct. But people were still calling them Krauts, and you still had that essential dehumanization of the enemy.
Well, I think today that I think you raised the critical element of that discussion, and that's awareness. And I think probably awareness comes from language, and being in a place where you don't speak the same language means that you can't understand them at all, let alone culturally. So I mean, I definitely see where that goes, but it just strikes me as certain things would be a very clear line in the sand. That you would be able to see it coming. That you would be able to identify it and be like, okay, I grew up.
We'll raise the awareness enough so that the next time, we're forced to take up arms against people of a different color, at least maybe the guys out there will think twice and have that kind of awareness. But the one thing we learn from history is that we never freaking learn from history.
Right. Well, we'll move on. Adam, what should happen to the president and the Bush administration? And what are your thoughts about a Congress which has stonewalled impeachment to such a degree as to be considered complicit with Bushco? Is this, I mean, what do we do about that?
I'll get to that, but I wanted to say one last thing about what we were talking about.
Okay, sure. Go ahead.
Wrap that up. And then I was in civil affairs. I taught myself Arabic while we were there, and it's because you mentioned it about speaking other languages and whatnot, but I taught myself Arabic. I went out of my way in order to be better at my job, and still I was capable of certain acts of dehumanization that I'm still dealing with the guilt of to this day. So I considered myself the nicest American in Iraq. I used to be about it because I really was, and I would go out of my way to be nice to the Iraqis that we dealt with in our daily work. But still, in that situation, even then, I engaged in that behavior that demonstrated this absolute disregard for human life and dehumanization. So,
well, let me just say that just the fact that you're able to be honest about it and to confront it in this kind of a way raises the respect bar by leaps and bounds, because I always say that it's not the mistakes that a man makes that are really important. It's how they respond to them later. Do you continue to perpetuate that kind of mistake, or do you do whatever you've got to do whatever you can to rectify that mistake? So the man who's able
I don't think there's anything to rectify what I've done, but at least I can do what I can now to ensure that it never happens again.
Well, I mean, semantics are semantics, but I think that what you're doing right now does rectify those kind of things because it keeps it from happening again. And if it can keep it from happening again with somebody else, then you've taken positive steps toward fixing, something that you participated in screwing up, is my perspective. So when I talk to people about, horrible things that they may have done, the fact or whatever mistake it was, the fact that you can confront it, accept it, embrace it, and try to do something to help fix whatever you screwed up, it says legions for the character of the man. I really think that, man, for real.
Well, thank you. Do you want to talk about impeachment?
Bushco. I want to talk about what we do with these Nazi criminal SOBs in the White House that need to be strung up by their toenails in public and beaten naked. What do we do about these people?
Well, I've long been an advocate of impeachment, and I share your angst, and as much as I would love to see that, our Congress is complicit. We can demand accountability all we want, but it doesn't do any good if the people aren't willing to do what it takes and make the sacrifices and take the stand to enforce accountability. And we don't even use our electoral process to enforce accountability. How many of the Democrats that ran in 2006 on an anti-war platform who have failed to end the war now are going to get reelected anyway? And I would bet it's the majority because we don't pay attention enough. We don't have enough concerned citizens that are going to run against them. We don't have enough people that are willing to become educated voters and educate others. And so as much as when I see, when I talk about impeachment, I believe that it's absolutely the morally right thing to do and essential. I do hope that someday there is accountability in a criminal court of some kind for the Bush administration, for everybody that's responsible, not just for the war, but all of the other unconstitutional policies that they've carried out. But I think more importantly is that we use it or more realistically, that in terms of the immediate benefit of this kind of advocacy, is that we are raising awareness to the point where people are going to say, wait a second, how are we enabling this? And de Tocqueville said it best, I think, in 1831 in Democracy in America, when he said, in a democracy, the people will get the government they deserve. And I believe that our political system still functions enough. We have enough of a functioning democracy in this country that our government is more of a reflection of us as a people and our political culture than the other way around. And our political system is corrupt because our political culture is corrupt. And until we fix that, until we have the revolution that we're all talking about, which really has to be fundamentally a bottom-up movement. It has to be a revolution of values, a revolution of understanding, a revolution of commitment of what it means to be a responsible citizen in a democratic republic.
If we learned anything from the Ron Paul revolution, we learned that the greatest efforts definitely come from the bottom up. That's for sure.
Oh yeah, well, there were some other reasons that was where we saw the greatest work in the Ron Paul campaign. But when we get that, we start living up to the principles that our founders set forth for us, and we start living up to the standards that they set for us.
Well, the people don't even know what those standards are, Adam. We've been so brainwashed and so manipulated and so conditioned by the mainstream media. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's essential. That's part of the challenge is raising awareness and inspiring other people to live their principles. But it's something in the Ron Paul movement too. We don't talk about enough. And I don't know if you've heard similar stories, but you hear people. And I've heard a lot of these stories. I think they're really, really inspiring. People who said, I heard Ron Paul, and I quit my job, and I became a full-time activist. And now I'm working on the blimp, or I'm knocking on doors every day, or I'm a full-time internet activist. The guy that started Daily Paul. There's just you hear all these great things. People go, oh, sweet, you're the guy. That's awesome. Or you're working on this. That's freaking amazing. But what we're missing here is the real importance of this, which is the start of it, and the nexus, really, which is I quit my job for the government. I withdrew myself from the system. I stopped paying taxes. I withdrew my complicit support for the tyranny that we are experiencing. And I think that's the culture we need to develop. We need to hold people to the standard. Like, if you're a Ron Paul supporter and you believe in the principles of liberty, do you really want to take that job for the IRS?
If you really believe that, then you can't. You can't. If you really believe those things, you can't.
We don't call each other out on that. We don't hold each other to those standards.
Welcome to the HX show, brother, because I call them out.
Well, no. I'm not passing judgment on you personally, but as a movement.
No. We call them. We did that. You're right. We do need to call them out, and we need to hold people to. What was the? I heard a phrase recently that somebody said that the greatest disinfectant is sunlight. So if people are not doing what they got to do, expose that stuff to the light of day. I have this debate, and I don't know how familiar you are with the 9/11 debates, but I have this debate with people all the time about no planes versus planes and demolitions and all that stuff that was going, all the theories around that, around those issues. And I'm confronted with the argument that certain theories are harmful to the movement. And I always respond with the same thing, that if they are harmful, then you must confront them and defeat them and then move on. You can't just brush things under the rug and expect that to solve any kind of problems, because all that's going to do is perpetuate it. So I agree 100% with what you're saying.
Well, I'm not really talking so much about calling people out, because I don't want this to be a combative dialogue. But what I want people to do is,
well, what I'm saying is I have a serious problem. We live in a day today where people understand the truth about this war. It's everywhere you look. Everybody knows
and we
that
still pay taxes.
And we still pay taxes. We still have soldiers that re-enlist for foreign.
I don't pay taxes. Well,
that's great. You're a gem among coal. Then you know what I'm saying. My point is that we have a whole country of people that continue to perpetuate the same old cycle over and over and over and over and over again. And I think
we have to inspire people to make the sacrifices, because it's not easy for someone to leave the military. It's not easy for someone to become a war resistant. It's not easy for someone who works for the IRS, who's getting a great paycheck every month, who's got a family dependent on it, to say,
My question is it easier to leave the military, or is it easier to